Hey folks, Jim here, aka Palette of the Dead. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new issue of Warhammer 40,000 Imperium magazine. Now, as per usual, if you like the videos, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course, drop a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, and it goes an absolute massive way to help the channel too. Now, this week we're on issue 7 of Imperium magazine, and it's the first issue where it's just paints. So we get 3 pots of paint, so different from good old Mortal Realms magazine where we used to get just 2 pots per time. We're getting 3 pots, which is pretty handy because the price point of the magazine is slightly higher than Mortal Realms was. And this week we get a pot of Corax White, fantastic base colour, very handy to have. Now, one thing with any white paint, it is a heavier pigment. So what will happen generally, quite regularly, and you will get really frustrated by it, but don't, paint will separate. So white is really bad for it. So eventually you'll get a lot of kind of liquid and kind of a clump of kind of a horrible kind of claggy substance. Now, best way to combat it is get a couple of mixing balls, preferably heavy glass beads, do very well for this. Put 2 in the pot, add a tiny bit of medium every time you need to, just literally 1 or 2 dabs of it, and shake it like nobody knows what. Just literally shake the hell out of it. It should bring it back together, especially with having the 2 mixing balls in there. The mixing balls should rattle around. You might hear them kind of clinking off the side of the pot and everything like that before it's kind of ready to get going, but as soon as you can't hear it as heavy and you can't hear it thudding around as much because it's getting coated in paint and everything like that, it is pretty much ready to do. You can use stainless steel balls if you want to, however they always have a potential of rusting inside the paint, and that will change the actual colour and texture of the paint and can actually do more damage than it's worth as well with them. But very handy to do, and definitely get yourself some medium as well. Then we also get Mechanica Standard Grey, a fantastic paint. I always use it as a base colour for pretty much every model I paint, because it's slightly dark, but it's not too dark, and it's not too light at the same time. It is kind of a right kind of colouring for majority of models, and you can get some really good looks out of it as well, so really handy to have that one as well. And then we also get Retributor Armour, which is a fantastic gold paint as well. It's not a very bright gold, but it is a very effective gold, especially for kind of like your embellishments on weapons and kind of charms and stuff like that as well on the actual kind of units that you're doing, especially Space Marines and your Necrons. You can use them a bit on both, and it works very well. So really good paints to have, and very handy, very useful. So make sure you're getting this issue if you need your extra paints, and don't lose them, don't knacker them up, and away you go. Into the issue itself, we get more stuff to do with the background of Ultramarines, names and titles. So the genetic enhancements that lend each Space Marine their size and strength also grant them extended lifespans. The greatest of these superhuman warriors may fight for centuries, earning titles and honours, and leaving their name etched into the history books of their chapter. So, the Ultramarines maintain a tradition of noble names that can be traced back more than 10,000 years. In the intervening millennia, these names have been shaped by the culture of the worlds of the realm of Ultramar, the Ultramarines' stellar empire. The names of the greatest Ultramarine heroes are well known across the Imperium and are spoken in awe. Manius Calgar, Cato Sicarius, and Varro Tigarius all have taken their place in the annals of mankind. So this is basically kind of expanding your ways of dealing out names and kind of titles and honorifics to your Space Marines, whether you're using them as Ultramarines or whether you're doing any of the other Space Marine chapters, whether it's Imperial Fists, Sons of Medusa, Blood Angels. You can use this kind of scheme in the same way. So the way it works is you are rolling a D66. Now, of course, you're not going to have a 66-sided dice because that would be ridiculous. The way to roll a D66 is you use 2 dice, 2 regular 6-sided dice, you roll a 10 side, and then you roll a units side. So, for instance, your basics can only go up to 6, of course. So if you rolled a 3, and then you rolled another 4, so it would equal 34. So you would go to number 34, which is Tracheon. Etricus, for instance, would be the name for that one. You could also kind of manipulate it a little bit, so you could always do 2 rolls and basically do a roll for the first name and then a roll for the surname, and you can mix and match them and everything like that. What you'll find is all the names sound very, very Roman Empire-esque, and that is because the Ultramarines are essentially space Roman Empire, really, in a kind of roundabout way. So a lot of the names sound along that type of thing. So Linus, Atticus, Octavius, for instance, are very, very kind of reminiscent of Roman heroes. So really, really good fun. Quite fun to do. You can do it with the titles, which they recommend doing it as D33, which is slightly different. So D33, you would be rolling 2 dice again, but the way the dice rolls work, so if it's a 1 or a 2, it equals just 1. A 3 and a 4 equals 2, and a 5 and a 6 equals 3. And you do that with 2 dice. So for instance, if you had 2 and 4, it only equals 12. So really pretty easy kind of to do. And you do that for your titles, and you also do that for your honorifics, and you get a very kind of nicely kind of intricate and unique way of kind of detailing your Space Marine characters and heroes as well. So really, really good fun. We also have exactly the same for the Necrons as well. So the Necrons are, of course, before their transformation into murderous androids, the Necrons were, of course, a race of flesh and blood who called themselves the Necrontyr. Necron nobles still bear the ancient names and bequeath them upon their birth, as well as magnificent titles that they have claimed for themselves. So the Necron nobles place great importance in name and reputation, often taking grand titles that reinforce their status, wealth, and martial might. The names of the most powerful Necron Therons and overlords, such as Imhotep, the Stormlord, and Tarzan, the Infinite, inspire fear in their foes. Most lower-ranking Necrons also retain names and titles, save for Necron warriors, who no longer possess memories or freedom of will. So this is mainly kind of your pretty much everything other than the warriors. So you don't have to name all your warriors, which is pretty handy because you can expect we're going to get quite a few. So you can kind of go through all of this. So you'll have a lot of names that sound very kind of ancient Egyptian in a way as well. So for instance, you have Iktar, and you have Zank, and characters like that, and Tekmar, for instance, and Makrit. So very kind of ancient Egyptian sounding names, and then they have a title which is a magnificent title. So for instance, the Unliving, the Glorious, or you could have the Void Walker, or the Theron's Hand, for instance, as their kind of titles. And it's essentially the same roles as you were doing for the Space Marines, but it's a unique way of naming your units as well, and making them kind of stand out a little tiny bit more, and having a bit more fun with them, which is always really cool. And then you also get to do the epithets as well for them, so which is using the D33 method as well, and the unit names as well, for which you can use for your warriors. So you name the actual host itself for your warriors. So for instance, for 3 warriors that we had before, you can name that kind of little grouping using the D33 dice roll. Very, very good stuff. Pretty handy to have as well. Then we move on, we've got a bit more information about the lore, and this is all to do with the Imperium itself. So, the Era Indomitus. The Imperium Resurgent, divided in 2 by the Great Rift, threatened by the countless foes, the Imperium of mankind looks to its greatest living hero for salvation. In the wake of the Great Rift's opening, the Imperium of mankind was split in 2. To the galactic north lay the Imperium Nihilus, cut off from Holy Terror, and the Emperor's guidance, it was plagued by demonic hosts, rampaging bands of traitors and predatory alien foes. To the galactic south of the Great Rift was the Imperium Sanctus, where the Emperor's light still shone. Yet, even here war raged. Chaos warbands and alien forces threatened Terra itself. So, the Imperium of Man doesn't just include Space Marines, it actually includes different factions as well, from the Adeptus Sororitas, the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Adeptus Custodes, the Astra Militarum as well. So it kind of incorporates several different factions on its own as well. So we get more information about these. So the Imperium at War, the Lord Commander of Rabut Gilliman as well, who is an ancient title that has only been borne by a few warriors, and he has supreme authority over the Imperial Armed Forces itself, and a pretty cool model as well, which is really, really good. And so, yeah, lots of bits and pieces to do with that. Then we move on, we've got some more how to paint sections as well. So this is all about making sure that you get some decent techniques and kind of you get them in quite early. So, for instance, thinning your paint. Very, very handy to do with a lot of paints as well. You add a little tiny bit of clean water, kind of twist your brush as you pull it away from your palette, and you will get a very, very nice point on it, and away you go. Make sure you're using your brush direction in the correct way. You don't want to be pushing your brush, you want to be pulling your brush and drawing it away from the where your kind of start point is, really. Use your table to rest your hands. A very, very handy trick to do. It steadies them as well, because you're bracing your wrists. If you're trying to do it kind of holding it like that, you generally have a little bit of a movement. So as you can see, my hand is moving slightly just from my natural breathing as well. So very, very handy to do. Some pretty good techniques, very, very kind of interesting as well at the same time. Then you've got your actual painting and using the different paints. So using your Corax White, for instance, for certain areas of a model. So for instance, the actual embellishments on parts of the shoulder pads, on some of your units, and on the actual, like the captain, for instance, on his face, which will be utilized later on when you paint up using, I'm guessing we'll definitely get a wash at some point soon. We'll get Reichland Flash Shade, for instance, which over Corax White can look pretty decent and can make it a very nice kind of pale skin looking look to it. Then you're using your Retributor armor, which is mainly for doing kind of like edges and edge work of things like the shoulder pads, certain parts of weapons, so like the butts of the chainswords, and like the pommel, for instance, and then the actual Aquila on the front of the chest plate. That winged skull kind of iconography works very, very well. So this is making your model stand out a lot more. So really, really easy to do, very good to do as well, and you're definitely going to need to do it for your models, especially if you're following this painting guide, and this will keep you going and keep going really, really well. It doesn't show you Mechanica Standard Grey now as much. So your Mechanica Standard Grey, you could use it as a base coat on certain areas. For instance, on kind of like your scabbard and stuff like that for the sword. You could use it on the weapon hilt and the holster and everything like that if you wanted to. Or you could just leave it and hang on. Entirely up to you. You can also use Mechanica Standard Grey as a base coat, as I've said before. I always do that. I always use Mechanica Standard Grey because I find that colours tend to take to it quite easily without having to use too many layers before it's actually quite a balanced kind of paint scheme. Then we've got our playthrough section. So this is Necron Resurgence. So you will be using your Necron Warriors and 2 Assault Intercessors, and then you'll have your objective, and it is literally going across on your main battle mat as well. Very easy to do. It's a large battle. Have a bit of fun with it, follow it, and you'll kind of pick it up quite easily for some of the battle plans that we get later on, which will be very, very handy to have, and yeah, have an enjoyable time with it, which is the main thing. And then next week, issue 8, we get the Necron Overlord, which is a brilliant model, and I'm looking forward to it. He's a pretty cool looking dude, and definitely a really, really good one to have. And then 9 and 10, we get Necron Warriors. So in total, we're going to get it is 10 Necron Warriors, so we'll get 5 each issue, and we'll also get some Scarabs as well along through that. So 3 lots of Scarabs, which of course the Scarabs kind of are designed to just be there and kind of help and just kind of remove flesh and stuff like that as well from their enemies, and harass as well, which is pretty cool for stuff. So really, really good. So yeah, definitely bulking out your Necron army a little bit more now, as we've had some heavy fire from, we've got our Space Marines, and the magazine's really, really kicking along. Now, before I go, one thing, next week's issue and video will be late because I'm on holiday. I'm not gonna lie, I'm on holiday for the first time in 2 years. I'll be away, but the video will turn up on Sunday, so don't miss it. There will be some content going up. There will be a couple of painting videos, and there will be White Dwarf this weekend as well. So really good stuff. A lot to look forward to, a lot of painting time to catch up on, but really good stuff. Right, I'm going to let you all go to it now. So have a bit of fun, enjoy your magazine, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye now.